I've been using the iPad mini 6th generation for just over a year now, and I've got some thoughts. So I used to have the 11-inch iPad Pro way back in 2019, and then I got the iPad mini 6th generation just to test out, just to see how I like it. And now, fast forward a year and a little bit, and I've sold the 11-inch iPad Pro, and I've stuck with my sole device as the iPad mini 6th generation. I've coupled this alongside my MacBook Pro 16-inch as well as my iPhone 14 Pro. And with that being said, in today's video, we're going to be going over some of the things that I do like about the iPad mini, some of the things that I don't like, and make sure you stick around till the end because I'm going to be answering the question of who should be getting this device. And as always, I'm going to be letting you know if it is worth your hard-earned money buying the iPad mini 6th generation 1 year later. Before we start, make sure you click that subscribe button. My name is Aryan, and let's just jump right into the video. Design. This is by far one of my most favorite things about the new iPad mini. It follows the same design language as the other iPads, which in my opinion, I think are built and look very, very good. So the first thing that you notice, and the first thing that I noticed when I was looking at this iPad, is just how thin it is. Like, it is a very, very slim device, a little bit of a camera bump. It's not the biggest deal in the world, and the slim design really goes along with the small and compact form factor. Not to mention, it is built extremely well. It feels premium in your hand. The aluminum feels nice and cold to the touch when you haven't used it in a while. And you know, like I said, it follows the Apple design language, and I'm really happy that they didn't skip any corners, making this a premium feeling device, even though it's kind of like the little brother of the iPad world. It also has a USB-C port, which I'm very happy to see. I'm glad they didn't go with the Lightning port, because USB-C just gives you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more options, especially when you're connecting some peripherals to it. It also works with the Apple Pencil 2, which also sticks right on the side of the iPad magnetically, which I'm again really happy because that's a really good feature, especially not to lose the Apple Pencil. As well as the bezels. You know, the bezels I think are a good size. They're not the slimmest ones in the world, but that's okay with me because when my hands are on the iPad mini, it gives it a place for my thumbs and my fingers to rest without getting in the way of the screen. So overall, the build quality is very nice. It's very premium. I think it is also future-proof because I don't see the iPads moving away from this design anytime soon. So I can safely say that a year later, the design has definitely stood up to the test of time, and I really enjoy it. The size. Now, no pun intended, this is probably the biggest reason to consider the iPad mini. I'll just be straight up, I think the size is perfect. It's nice and one-handable. I can palm it pretty easily. You know, it provides a much better viewing experience if you're consuming content like something like the iPhone because the screen is quite substantially bigger, but it also doesn't get in the way too much like a bigger 11 or even the bigger almost 12.9-inch iPad Pro would be. So for me, like I already have the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and then my smaller device, my phone, takes that. So I don't need another big device. And that's why I love this iPad mini because it's like that perfect middle ground for me. And I'm telling you, like go to the Apple store, pick up this device, put it in your one hand, and you're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be something that once you get used to, you're gonna really start loving the size and the portability of it. You know, actually the one place where I feel like the size is just so good is when I'm in bed. You know, like I'm just having this either propped up on the smart cover or I'm just like holding this over my head and I'm not worried about it falling down on my face. And I think it's just the perfect device and the perfect size for content consumption, especially for me just when I'm lounging around in bed or just in the house. And that moves me along to content consumption. That is what I primarily use this iPad mini for. I used to use my iPad Pro for school. I used to take notes on it with the Apple Pencil and stuff. And if I really need to, I still take notes on this with the Apple Pencil, but that's not my primary use for it. I think that this really, really shines in the whole content consumption space, whether that's watching YouTube videos, Netflix, movies, you know, like even editing some pictures, reading, like my textbooks are on it. It almost makes textbooks pleasurable, which is a hard thing to do. So I just feel like if you want a device for content consumption, then that is really, really where you should consider this iPad mini because I feel like that is its biggest strong suit. All right, now moving on to some of the things that I don't like about the iPad mini. The screen. I would say this is one of the biggest downsides of the iPad, but before you make a decision, let me just clear something up. The iPad mini screen is not bad. But when you compare it to some of the higher end screens such as the iPad Pro, you know, like the amazing display that's on the MacBook Pros, even the iPhones, it doesn't really live up. So again, it's not bad, you know, like I said, content consumption is one of its greatest features, but it's not the same high quality panel as you'll find on some of the other premium Apple devices, which makes sense, but it's also one of the downsides. So for example, all my other devices are 120 Hertz, they have ProMotion. Now when I go back to the 60 Hertz on the iPad mini, it's a little bit jarring. It's not a deal breaker for me because I chose to keep this over the 120 Hertz on the iPad Pro, but it is something that you'll never really get used to, especially if you've seen ProMotion before, and it's something that I wish it did have. And then also the brightness. It's not the brightest display in the world, it's only 500 nits, so you're not going to be in a great situation if you're outside direct sunlight. It's not going to be too visible, but at the same time, for the stuff that I do, especially in my room, around the house, maybe in a classroom, it's completely fine. So it's not a bad display, but it's not a great display either. Face ID. The iPad mini also doesn't have Face ID. Now again, this is where it kind of cuts a little bit of corners because it is not the premium iPad Pro, which is the one that has Face ID. But I wish it did, you know, I still wish it did. The problem is not that it doesn't have Face ID, but I think the problem is that the fingerprint reader is actually just kind of slow. You know, I got used to opening a smart cover and just having to unlock my iPad with Face ID with the iPad Pro, but if the fingerprint scanner was faster on the iPad mini, I don't think I would have any problem. But I'm telling you, like, again, we're talking about fractions of a second here, but there is definitely a little bit of a delay when you place your finger on the fingerprint reader than when it actually opens. Just something to note again. Definitely not a deal breaker by any means, but since we're nitpicking, I definitely thought you should know and I should mention it. All right, and the last thing that I don't really like about the iPad mini is the storage options. I have the 64 gigabyte option, but the only other option is 256. And I feel like if you're spending that amount of money, then you're kind of crossing into like the iPad Air territory. Now, do a lot of people need 256 gigabytes? I don't really think so. But 64, let's face it, is not a lot either. So that begs the question, where's the 128 at? I feel like that would be the perfect storage option, but unfortunately they don't have that for the iPad mini 6. I got the 64 gigabyte version, and that's because I told you I have the other devices. So I don't really store a lot of stuff on this iPad. I don't really have many games. I don't really have many pictures that I really keep on the iPad. So for me, 64 gigabyte is working, but I know that it's not going to work for everybody. All right, let's wrap this up because I feel like I've been a little bit negative. All in all, I love my iPad mini 6. I really enjoy using it on the daily, so much so that I sold my bigger 11-inch iPad Pro for it. Like I said, the size, the portability, the ease of use, it all adds up to an experience that I would say is just easy to use. Now, this iPad mini came out in late 2021, and there hasn't been another announcement since then. So maybe they are going to announce one pretty soon, maybe not, we don't know. So that leads me to the question, is the iPad mini worth it right now in 2023? I personally think it is worth it. Now, even if they do release a newer iPad, maybe with a faster processor, maybe with a little bit better of a screen, cool. I don't think that anything revolutionary is going to be added to the iPad mini 6th generation in the 7th generation that is going to warrant you to have to wait for it or even to pay more for it. Now, I say that this is a great device, especially if you fall into two major categories. First, if 64 gigabytes is an option that's okay for you, by all means, I think the 64 gigabyte iPad mini, if you're looking for this size, is very good. If you keep your stuff in the cloud, if you're not consuming a lot of media that's downloaded directly on the device, you'll be just fine with 64 gigabytes because believe me, I can speak from experience, I'm fine with just 64 gigabytes. The second category is that if you're using it as a companion device, which I also fall into this category. If you have a bigger laptop that you enjoy using, if you have a phone that you enjoy using, this iPad is kind of like that middle ground where it's not taking up too much space, but it's also provides you a better experience and especially a little bit more versatile experience than a big laptop or a small phone. So with that being said, that's it for me in this video. I hope you found it helpful and I hope you found it useful in making your purchase decision if you choose to buy or not buy the iPad mini 6. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So leave it in the comments below and I'll catch you in the next video. Again, my name is Aryan. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe because it helps me out a lot with this whole YouTube scene and I'll see you guys in the next one.